Today it's the focus series, and we're focusing on drafts. So this is our first webinar of the focus series, and really the idea behind the focus series is to have short, concise sessions where we focus on one aspect of asset map functionality. We will be doing more of these and having them more regularly in 2024. So please watch out for those invites and join these sessions. As we mentioned, we're recording the session, so we'll share that with all of you after the session today. We also have Gary and Benny on the chat box, so please, if you have any questions during the session, just pop onto the chats and post it in there. We will have some time at the end of the session as well to answer any questions that have come up. Right. So with that, I'm going to get started. So drafts was introduced about 2 months ago, and you may be asking, well, what is drafts and what does it do? Well, for us, it's more than just a feature. It's really a bridge between showing a client their current financial realities and future possibilities. And how it does that is it gives you the ability to make changes to a client's asset map without actually changing their current picture. So you can show a client proposed changes or options that you're considering to enable engagement between you and the client. So often we go through, a client's current picture, we work through cash flows or target maps of that client, and we decide on specific actions that we're going to be taking or options. But what this gives us the ability to do is tangibly reflect that for a client and make it visual by showing them the impact of those changes. So let's talk a little bit about the functionality. Once you enter the draft mode, and I'm going to show you and take you through how to do that, what you'll see is at the bottom of the screen, a black bar will appear, giving you the ability to make changes to the picture. You'll also see at the back, there'll be a watermark showing the word draft so that you know you're in that drafts mode. And some of the changes that you can make is deleting or adding additional financials. So in this example, I wanted to reflect for Arthur the impact of combining these cash investments that he has into one ISA investment. So you can see that I've shown in the draft that I'm removing these 3 investments and I'm adding an additional investment. Any financials that you remove during the draft will show this little trash can icon in the top right, and any financials that you add will show a little plus sign. So you can see how by doing this, you can visually depict this is what we're moving or this is what we're transferring from this investment to that investment. We can also show edits or changes that we want to make to a specific financial. For example, I can change the amount to say we're topping up that specific investment, or I can put a note in the details line here to say, we're transferring it to a different investment, or we're changing the underlying investment. Any edits that you make to a financial will show with a little pencil in the top right-hand corner so that you can depict that to the client. In addition, you can also add any assets or financials, and that will show with that colorful plus sign in the top right-hand side. So all in all, it gives you the ability to add, remove, or edit anything on the page. You could even make changes such as showing different ownership. We're transferring it from this individual to another individual, or we're moving an asset from your name into the trust. You can depict any of those changes and reflect it by turning on the drafts and showing that change. Also at the bottom here, you'll see that you can add notes into a draft. You can hide or show changes to quickly toggle between turning them off to go back to the current picture and turning them on to display the proposed changes that you're making. If you've created multiple drafts, so for example, if the client has multiple options that you want to engage with them on and work through each of those options to make sure they understand that what's available to them, you can create multiple drafts and you can change and flip through each of them by selecting this change draft option here. So the next question we get is, well, when should I use drafts? In what situations would this be the right functionality to use? And we really believe that the best place to use drafts is when you want to enable those difficult conversations. For example, if the changes are confusing. Good examples of this is life event changes. There's a lot happening at once, a lot of moving parts. By using drafts, you can bring clarity where there's confusion. By visually showing the client, this is the different changes that's going to happen. These are the things that are going to move around. You can also use drafts to simplify complex structural changes. When there's movement between entities, things moving from a business to a trust or an individual to a trust, you can simplify those complex structural changes by visually showing that using drafts. The third scenario is if the consequence is high. So there are multiple options that the client needs to choose from, as an example, and whichever option they choose, the impact or the consequence is high. You really want to make sure that they understand each and every option and they feel like they can make an informed decision. So these are some of the scenarios. And please, if there's more that's coming to your mind, add it into the chat box and let's share that. But this is really where the power of drafts comes through, is that bringing clarity, bringing simplification, and showing a client when there's lots of options, what the impacts of all of those will be. It can also be used anywhere in that advice engagement process, and it just depends on that specific scenario or situation with that client. So, for example, you could be using drafts when you're in Asset Map to show structural changes, where you may not even have gone into cash flows or target map planning, but you want to show a client the movements or the changes that are happening structurally to their picture. You can use it to depict that. You could also use drafts post implementation options. So, for example, if you've gone through the client's current position, you've worked through the target maps, and you've together agreed on certain decisions or actions that are going to be taken, you can use drafts to reflect those actions, to make it real for the client so that they can see, okay, this is the impact of what we've decided. You can even use it further along in the advice engagement process, post implementation. So an example of that is you may have gone through the current picture, gone through the, target maps or cash flow modeling, agreed on certain changes and implemented it. And you can use drafts just to close that conversation or close that loop around, this is where we were and this is what your picture looks like post those changes. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the model and just take you through how you would use it. Okay, Gary, just to double check, you can see Asset Map. All right, so in this first example, we've got James Jones. And as you can see, he's earning an income here of £70,000 a year. He's got a pension fund, some life cover, property and a mortgage on that. And on the right here, we can see he's got a unit trust with ABC provider, another one with XYZ, and an ISA. Now, let's say, for example, in this line, I want to show them the impact of, we want to transfer this investment with XYZ across to this ABC investment. So consolidate the two of them together. I can use a draft to reflect that. So if I want to turn on drafts mode, I click on the colorful plus here on the left-hand side. Or remember, you can always use the shortcut right-click menu and access stencils or drafts or layouts from there. So you click on that, select drafts, and here I'd be able to select from an existing list if I've created it for this particular household, or I can select to create a new draft. So I'm going to say we want to create a new draft, consolidating investments. So you give it a name of whatever you want to call that draft that sort of reflects the changes that you're proposing. And I select create. Now I've entered the drafts mode. Immediately you'll see there's this watermark on the back of the page to indicate that I'm in drafts. This black bar has appeared at the bottom here, and that gives me the ability to make edits or make changes on this picture and show the impacts of that. So for example, in this case, I want to move this unit trust to here. So I'm going to open this one up and select delete. And you'll see it's not changing the current picture, but it has indicated here that we're removing this one. I then want to edit this one to show that we're going to add that £47,000 to this. That gets me to 105,000 going into this investment. Again, that's depicted with this little pencil. They're both highlighted, so I can immediately draw the client's attention to what the changes are that we're discussing. At the bottom again, I can add in any additional notes. I can hide the changes and show the changes to flip through, before and after. And I can switch into different drafts if I've created other ones for this client. I I can also generate a PDF report by selecting that in the top right-hand corner, and that will create PDF that I can then sit down with the client and engage with them on. So you can see again, it shows that it's a draft, it shows the name of the draft, so you can see which ones you're looking at, and it shows the proposed changes. All right. So that's the how-to. One more step on that is if I then want to accept those changes, I can click. So accepting it means I want to change the client's current picture based on what we've selected in the draft. If I open up the block, you'll see there's now a new tab at the top that says drafts. And in here, I can commit that change. So in this case, it would be deleting that. And I can do the same thing here. You say we've agreed, I'm committing that change, and now it has changed the current picture as well because I've accepted that change. But until that point, it stays in the draft mode and doesn't impact the client's current picture. All right, so let's talk about a couple of scenarios of where we think drafts can work really well. And the first one I want to talk about is retirement, but think of it as any life event, any big life change that's happening in a client's life. Often those are the moments where there's lots of changes happening at once. And it can be, even though we can talk through it with the clients and we can do the modeling to show them, this is the income you need and you've got enough funds. It's also a lot of structural changes. And drafts is a great way of just making that tangible for the client. What's moving where? What's changing? Where am I going to get my income from? So in this example, we've got Jack. Jack has an income here. He's got some personal life cover and he's got some life cover via his employer. He's got a couple of trust investments, an ISA, property and mortgage, and a pension fund. And he's about to retire. And I want to use drafts to show the client the impact of that. So again, I'm going to click on this colorful plus, select drafts, but now I've pre-created that retirement draft, so I can select it here and just select existing draft and apply it. Now I can work through all the highlighted blocks to reflect the changes that's going to happen. So the first thing here, Jack, is the salary is going to fall away, and we're going to make up your income requirements from other sources. The first source is from the state pension. That's going to start paying now as you're 67. We're also going to draw £12,000 a year from your private pension. And we're going to combine these unit trust investments to an investment that we can manage and ensure that you can draw $8,300 a year from that investment. That's going to give you a total of £30,000 a year, which is the income that you require. In addition, we can talk through other benefits that are possibly going to fall away at retirement. In this case, the life cover via your employer will fall away, but your personal life cover will remain in place. So you can see how just by showing the changes and depicting it visually, we can talk through it with the clients, and it just helps them by seeing the changes really cement, okay, this is what is going to happen when I now retire, or based on this life event, this is the changes I can expect. All right, and then another scenario that I want to work through today is if you were to use drafts in a different position. So in that first one, we, looking at retirement, it's a life event. We want to show the impacts of that. But let's have a look at Bob for a second, and let's assume this is a new client. We've got some information from Bob. We can see that there is some areas of concern, in terms of life cover, income protection. There's nothing in place at the moment, and we want to have a conversation around that. The first step, as you know, is then we could go into target maps, and we could look at what is Bob's current situation in the event of death. So here what we've said is, Bob, if something would happen to Bob, he would want to replace income of at least £2,000 or 24,000 a year for his family for the next 20 years. And that would need to keep up with the cost of living or inflation of 3%. He also wants to make sure he can cover all debts. So that's the current mortgage. He'd like to settle that in the event of death and have some funding for any inheritance tax that would need to be paid. So we've run the scenario and we can see that Bob would require an extra £527,000 in life cover or assets to fund that. So in this situation, we're proposing 500,000 in life cover. We've also run a similar scenario for income protection. And we've said in the event of Bob getting an illness or disability or just being unable to work for whatever reason, we would want to ensure that he has 42,000 a year from now until he's 65. And that would also need to keep up with inflation. So our proposal there is for an additional 3,500 per month in income protection cover. Now I can use drafts to say, once we've had this conversation, work through these scenarios and decided specifically this is what we're proposing, I can then create a draft to show the impact on the current picture of that change. So in this case, again, I can select an existing one that I've created, apply that to show that we're proposing life cover with XYZ of 500,000 and income protection of 3,500 a month. Again, just making that real for the client so they can make that informed decision. Right. Gary and Benny, any questions on that have come up so far? I can't see anything on my side. All good. All good.
Yeah,
okay.
no
questions. You're doing an awesome
Any thoughts
job.
that you want to add?
No, I think I love the interaction that you've just had with the cash flow modeling. I think that's like, it paints a really nice picture of this is where we're at. This is the role of the cash flow modeling, and then this is how we illustrate what the impact is going to be on our existing situation. So I thought that was awesome.
I think that's really important to note, is that you can use it in different places. So there's some conversations that you have with clients where there is no cash flow modeling, where it's really just about, these are the structural changes that we're needing to make. We want to move something or change underlying investment or, change ownership or show location. And drafts is just a great way of depicting that. But then if there is a situation with a client where you've gone through the full planning and you need to quantify exactly what the need is, you can use drafts to reflect that. So I think it's powerful in any situation. Just depends what the conversation is, but it's just a great way for me, I think, of enabling a conversation with a client because they can visually see it. And I think that's the step that's sometimes missing. What is the impact? What does that actually look like for me? And I think this is a great way of reflecting that.
Yeah, I think so much of the stuff can be like super hypothetical. So we say stuff to clients and it's hard to make that clear. Like, what do we mean? What are we talking about? But you reflect that back in the map. And yeah, it's not hypothetical. It's very tangible.
It's making it real.
Right, so I've got a much more basic observation, Kirsty. Maybe just flick back to the screen with the
oh yes, yes.
Can you? I mean, just what I loved is how you keep open those different tabs at the top. So I don't know if the audience are aware of that, but you can open up multiple instances of asset maps just to more easily navigate between scenarios. So for example, if it's a slightly more complex family and maybe different things, you can open up multiple tabs and work through that. So maybe Kirsty, just show how to do that. And then just one tip though is don't do it like 2 hours before the meeting because then it might log you out. And then you've got to open up 10 tabs and they're all, they're all logged out. So
I mean, it's such a good tip, especially if you've got a complex or an asset map that's complex with lots of members and lots of entities. You may want to have one tab with the 2 individuals and one tab with the companies and the trust open, or have one tab before the draft and one tab with the draft already reflected. You can do that simply by just right-clicking on a tab and duplicating, and it'll actually duplicate that exactly, and then you can navigate to show something different here by showing a different map or different individuals, or in this case, I can turn the draft on and show the impact of that, and then you can simply flip between, this is your current picture and this is the draft. Okay, so you just right-click and duplicate. All right, then maybe just to close out there, and then we'll open up if there are any questions, please just put it on the chat or the Q&A. But again, to reiterate, we want to use drafts to create clarity. especially where it's complex or there's confusion, to visually depict structural changes. We want to make that tangible for clients, especially if there's multiple options, making sure the client understands all the options available to them and what is going to be the best one for them. And most importantly, to visualize future possibilities. So this is where you are now, but this is what the future could look like. Let's reflect where we're going. What's that journey, and to where we want to be. Right. Okay, I'm going to stop there and just open up for any questions, thoughts. Thank you for your time today. We will send the recording out. The idea is to keep these sessions quite short, punchy, and focused on drafts. So let us know what you think of this format. What else you'd like to see in the focus series. Yeah, please let us know.
Thanks, Kirsty. That was awesome. Yeah, no questions coming through. So I think you can do an official close as well.
All right, perfect. We will do that. Thank you, everyone. Here's the chat. Thanks, Adam. All right, guys. Thank you very much. We'll send out the recording and chat soon.